Yeah, I mean, I'd still say I think it's in my bio or something, but I'm probably a much better boat washer than I am a boat broker.
Hi, this is Franklin Pillsbury, and welcome to our very first episode of the Pillsbury family legacy here, as well as what we're going to call Let's Go Boating. And basically, we're going to spend time talking about how boating changes lives. And as a family spanning 4 generations, we've had the opportunity to sell boats, go boating, and raise families around boats and some of those various different things. Right now, my son Kyle and I are sitting at Marine Max here in Fort Myers, Florida, where we both currently are working to sell boats and keep people out boating and enjoying. And Kyle, I know we'll talk a little bit about some of the bigger boats here in a few minutes, but what a great day here in Florida. It's a little warm today.
And very humid.
Well, I think it's that way across the country. Maybe not as much humidity, but definitely the temperatures for sure. So anyway, as we roll into this, I want to just, again, kind of give a little history. And Kyle, feel free to fill in where you can. I know that the late 40s, early 50s might be a little difficult for you.
I've only heard stories.
And we'll get your older brother Skip in on a later episode. He's at our Marine Max store down in Houston, technically, but Seabrook near the NASA Space Center on Clear Lake, and we'll tie him in as well. And then we've actually got some 4th-generation Pillsburys that are in and around the boat business, and be chatting about that as well. But my dad started really almost 70, well, over 70 years ago up in New Jersey on Lake Apatcon, which, again, Marine Max has a store on Lake Apatcon. And they lived, my mom and dad both lived, they lived in Ledgewood, New Jersey, which is actually where I was born, where they started. And back in that time, it was Dawson Marine and Hardware. And my dad worked for Ray Dawson. And one time, Mercury was having a dealer meeting in New York, and Ray took my dad to meet Carl Kiekefer and hear the whole story about Mercury and why it was the #1 selling outboard and everything else. And through that, met a gentleman from Texas, Bill Bell, that owned the Mercury distributorship in Texas and in Oklahoma, and got talking to my dad. And after Mr. Bell had spoke and talked about all the lakes being built in Texas and how the Dallas-Fort Worth area in particular was booming and going and all of that.
For people my age, you may want to let them know that the boats and motors were not a package back then.
They weren't a package. In fact, we'll talk more about that. But, you know, literally, your grandfather, my dad, was one of the early guys that helped to get packaged boats put together. And like outboards in particular on Sea Rays, the first part of packaging was just installing the control box and the gauges, believe it or not.
It is hard to believe.
Yeah, you're exactly right, though. The motors came in a cardboard box, and the boat came not put together, which is a whole nother story in itself. Anyway, Mr. Bell had spoken to the group there and just talked about how dynamic the Southwest was and how Mercury was, you know, really becoming a strong product in that area and people buying boats. And so next thing there in 1953, I was born in 52, we're moving to Texas. So Frank Sr. started to work for Bill Bell as a sales rep for Mercury Outboards and traveled primarily southwest part of Texas down into the valley and up the coast towards Houston. And then in 1954, Mr. Bell opened a store in Houston for both retail and wholesale with Mercury Outboards, Yellow Jacket boats, Husky trailers, and they were actually packaged. one of the things that Mr. Bell decided was that he was going to sell more outboard motors by hanging them on the back of those Yellow Jacket boats and delivering them to the dealers than the dealer buying a boat, buying a motor, and trying to put them together.
I'm just impressed with how you have everything so chronologically in order. It's, I guess that must come with age or something, because I couldn't remember what year anything.
Well, it's interesting because Houston, and the building is actually still there on the Gulf Freeway in Houston. And it was kind of a neat time because we'll talk, in down the line, but like Willis Hudson, who that had Falcon Boat Company out of Houston, and then later Shallow Sport, which is a very popular fishing boat today. Frank Sr. met Willis in Houston, and Willis was building a fiberglass boat with fins on it. And one of the conversations at the time, because all the cars had fins on them, was, were they tall enough?
I always wondered if that even did anything. It must have just been aesthetics or something.
It was stylish. And of course, one of the things, we'll talk more about this down the line too, but fiberglass boats, about 1952, built Tritt with glass bar boats. And then actually, couple of other people were just starting to build fiberglass boats.
Including Elvis Presley, right?
Well, he bought one.
No, but I thought the movie, remember the movie about the fiberglass race?
Yeah, that was later on, though. That was the Goop.
I got you.
Yeah, that was a later story. But anyway, fiberglass boats just starting. We're in Houston. And Yellow Jacket boats, which, again, Bill Bell was distributing and whatnot. Roy Rogers, the cowboy at the time. You probably can't relate to the popularity of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, but he had a TV show. He had a horse named Trigger, and he was part owner of Yellow Jacket Boats and loved to race boats. And so Bayshore Boat Club in Houston, your grandfather raced boats with Roy Rogers there, as well as some of the other people in Houston that we know today, Lee Richter and some others. So, and I was a kid, I remember those days, and it was all about, that's where the promotion stuff started. I have pictures of portable docks that Bill Bell put in the water so they could demo boats to people. So that was the mid-50s. So anyway, we were in Houston up till about 1957. Moved back to Dallas. And again, at the time, Bill Bell had retail and wholesale on Harry Hines Boulevard in Dallas, which is now Stoker's Motorcycle Shop. And in 1959, Mr. Bell decided to dedicate all his resources to just wholesale, just Mercury outboards at that time. And so he sold the retail business, and your grandfather, Frank III, started Frank Pillsbury Marine Sports. And about half the boats we had at that time were wood boats like Yellow Jacket, and the other half were fiberglass, which at that time was Power Cat, which was actually like a catamaran style boat, as well as Glass Bar and a couple other real nice high quality boats. So that got us started in the boat business in Dallas. And as we progressed along, we were always known kind of for having quality boats, Glass Bar at the time, and then Dorset boats after that. And then we were Sea Ray Boats' first dealer west of the Mississippi River in 1964. And at the time, C.N. Ray had a Learjet that he would pick dealers up, take them to the factory, and kind of wine and dine and show them why they ought to be Sea Ray dealers.
And that's when they were built in Michigan.
It was, yeah, in Michigan, and then eventually in Phoenix. They moved to Phoenix probably about 1970, 71, somewhere in that area. But it was interesting because at the time, most of the boat companies were very much about, just selling you boats and, patting you on the back, good luck, where C.N. Ray's strategy was, I want to help you be profitable, make money, reinvest, and build your business around Sea Ray boats. So here we are today, and you and I are still selling, servicing, and around people that have Sea Ray boats. So anyway, up into the 70s, we did everything we could to make it work in that small dealership there on Harry Hines. The gate between the service building and the showroom was 12 foot, and the 30-foot C-rays we put in and out of those gates were 11 foot 6 inches. And part of the key was that the gunnel molding was just above the top of the post that hung the gate. So if you were really good, you could back them in and out of there. And, of course, unloading boats with A-frames and chain falls and that kind of thing. And then in 1978, we moved to Interstate 35, to Stemmons Freeway, to a building that we designed and made it as a Sea Ray boat dealership. And when we moved there, we basically dropped all the other brands and made it a Sea Ray store. And part of the strategy there, we had to raise the area for the building for the floodplain. So we took the dirt off the property and actually built a 1 acre lake. And that 1 acre lake ended up being the showroom for the bigger boats in the water so that we could run air conditioners and those kinds of things. And also with a boat ramp that we could do boat deliveries there. So a lot of fun. And for you as kids, you and your brother, being on a green John Deere tractor and learning how to move boats.
Yeah. No, I can still remember Pillsbury, and I think to this day, I don't know of any retailer that's ever built something like that you could put, which was a huge boat at the time, a 46-foot Sea Ray Sundance.
Yeah, so when we decided to build the building, it was designed and built for Sea Ray boats and to create an experience for somebody to come in and not only look at the Sea Ray boats, but to feel like that's a place where you want to do business. And at the time, like Sewell Cadillac, which was renowned for customer service, we studied a lot of their service bay, their drive up, and some of those kind of things. And we had to raise the level of the building in order to be out of the floodplain. So we took all the dirt to raise the platform for the building and built a 1 acre lake, Lake Pillsbury, where we were able to put yachts. We built a dock, had yachts there where they were plugged in, air conditioners running, and then also a boat ramp so that especially a busy Saturday could do deliveries and people could actually see and get emotionally involved with what it looks like to deliver boats. And it was a great place for you and Skip to learn how to drive tractors and move boats around.
No, I had a lot of fun out there for sure. And I don't know that there's been a boat dealership to date that has done something like Pillsbury Boats did back then with, really it was to showcase a lifestyle. When people are doing 65 down the freeway or stuck in traffic, you can look out there and dream. So, I can still to this day remember how amazing. And I still have people remind me, like, I remember that store back there. So pretty amazing.
Well, at the time, there was 230,000 cars a day driving by. And one of the things that a lot of your grandfather's car dealer friends said, just get on the freeway.
Yeah.
Don't worry about an exit ramp or anything else. Just get on a freeway. And there was Saturdays that we did a lot of spot deliveries where somebody would come in, buy a boat, we'd get them financed or whatever on the spot and hook and go.
Take it the same day.
Exactly. And there was several times that when somebody was making a checkout, one of our competitors was Phil Dill Boats in Louisville.
Sure. And
they'd start making the checkout to Frank Dill or Pillsbury Marine or something like that. They didn't even necessarily know where they were sometimes. So that's how important that location was.
For sure.
And, the other thing, we delivered, 46-foot Sea Rays out of that lake up to Texoma or down to the Texas coast.
I still remember the production that was, it was before there was any real strategy in hauling boats somewhere. So it was a little trial and error and ingenuity.
Well, and as we do these shows, one of the things we'll talk about, and we'll add some photos and some testimonies from guys like Bruce Wagoner, but we had to build most of the equipment because the industry didn't supply them. Yeah. Like the jack stands today, yard arms. Mm-hmm. You know, they're great devices, and a lot of dealerships have yard arms, but we had to build our own. Sure. And because literally those bigger boats, you jack the boat up off of the transport trailer and then run the other trailer underneath it. There wasn't travel lifts. So it's kind of a fun deal. So anyway, that's a quick overview that kind of gets us up to our dealership in Dallas, which later became part of MarineMax. And you, Kyle, started in the business along with Skip at a very young age, again, moving boats or, you know, kind of hanging around the dealership, as I did. I started rigging boats when I was 12 years old. And, you know, back then, as you mentioned, the outboard motor was in a cardboard box. There was no windshield on the boat. The trailer had to be put together. It was rigging boats.
I've participated in that. I still actually remember what that was like too.
So you kind of, your roots, if you will, started really with Cochran's Marine, Dave Cochran up in Rogers, Minnesota. And prior to that, we were at Minnetonka Boat Works on Lake Minnetonka. And while you were in high school, a lot of fishing tournaments, a lot of events, you know, that we did, and a lot of fun there and whatnot. But I remember the very first twin engine boat that you drove at Minnetonka Boat Works, and it was a Windsor craft that Erwin Jacobs was trying to put in a slip and couldn't get in, and you just jumped in the boat and grabbed it and backed it right in.
Yeah, you know, in hindsight, looking back, and I remember, of course, there was a big restaurant there, and there's always people on the deck. You know, there were a lot of potential for failure. So,
well, yeah. Anyway, just, you know, so that was kind of a good start, and then later, part of the way you built your customer base before you got to Dave's up in Rogers, there was customers that liked hanging out at a place called Fletcher's on Lake Minnetonka, and you would become their ride home.
Yeah, interestingly, you know, between 14 and 16, I'd put more miles on yachts over 40 feet than I ever did in a car. So I'd get on my bike and literally ride it from home. And Plymouth, Minnesota I can't remember how far, but 6 or 7 miles or something, but it wasn't all uphill. And, you know, I'd drop my bike by the boat ramp and hop on, you know, Ron Burton's boat at the time and go out and take him out for the day and take him to lunch and come back, put the boat in the slip, wash it up, put the canvas on, and ride my bike back home.
And then later, he and those people became clients because you serviced and took care of them at a very young age.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you know, in hindsight, on the job training really did pay off quite well back then.
Well, and through that, as you went to MarineMax now, but Cochran's Marine and Rogers, and Dave was just building his new building there and getting ready to move into it. You kind of worked through that transition, had the opportunity to really get to know the service guys, work on that end of the business, washing boats. In fact, you're a pretty good boat washer today.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still say, I think it's in my bio or something, but I'm probably a much better boat washer than I am a boat broker or salesman. But it's enjoyable. You know, you get to see the beginning and the end, and it's something therapeutic about washing a boat. If you haven't done it, you should try it.
Well, and then, you know, one of the things that is done here at MarineMax is we have a caliper that is part of the onboarding process and hiring process and some of that to just kind of help figure out where you best fit and those kind of things. And I don't think your caliber was real good on sales.
No, but that was also before we were using computers. So it'll be 29, well, it was 29 years in April that I've worked for the company. And of course, it was Cochran's Marine before it became MarineMax. But Dave Cochran being one of the original principals that helped get MarineMax off the ground, you know, of course, our name had pretty good stock. But Dave gave me my early chance in the industry. And, you know, it was so much fun. First of all, we were somewhat new to Minnesota, and they'd send me out in the F-250, you know, 3 or 4 hours away from the dealership to deliver a boat. And here I am exploring all these beautiful lakes in Minnesota that, again, impossible to imagine that they're as beautiful as they are.
Well, and then later on, just part of for you, that training, you moved out to the river and away from home. I remember you had a pretty neat little place above a retail store in Stillwater, Minnesota. And then Rick mentoring you on the docks there at the marina of just, again, talking to customers and learning how to relate and build a relationship and those kind of things.
Yeah, Rick was very instrumental in my beginning, especially when it came to the sales process. And Rick is still at it today. Pretty amazing guy. Would be a good guy to have on your show. But yeah, I was able to learn about bigger boats, and that's where my passion for yachts started. And back in the late '90s, early 2000s, a 50-foot Sea Ray Sundancer was a huge boat. And that was especially a production.
Well, and I think you also learned a lot about the customers.
Sure, yeah.
That it wasn't so much about the boat, but when they came to their boat, what did they expect? When they got through with their boat, what did they expect? And also, again, another great story, the pharmacist that had the 48 sedan bridge.
Yes.
Okay. How old were you when you took that boat with those two down the Mississippi River all the way to Fort Lauderdale?
Yeah, that was awesome. I was still a teenager at the time, actually, so 19 or something like that. And I was thinking about going to college that year, and I didn't. And it was in the fall, and Tom and Sheila had asked me if I'd be their mate to take the boat down the river. And interestingly, Sheila operated the boat. Shouldn't say interestingly, but she was the captain, and Tom may have been the admiral, but she ran the boats. Anyhow, I learned a lot from them, and we took a month to get down the river. So we left in October sometime and took our time going down the river and stopping in really neat towns.
Yeah. So I know you learned a lot on that trip. And as you mentioned, Sheila had really put that whole trip together, organized it well. I remember those kind of things. But here you are, like 18 years old and running a boat down the river, and they hadn't done that before. And I remember the story. I think you guys hit a log or a towhead or something and had to do a haul out.
We were coming into, wasn't Aqua, it was Green Turtle Bay in Kentucky. And that was after one of the big locks coming off the Ohio River. And it was late in the day. We went to make a right-hand turn into the marina, and there was a old railroad bed there. And it's just one of those things, you miscalculate a little bit, you're tired or whatever. And we'd hit that railroad bed and took the props out. Bit of a blessing, though, because what a beautiful area. And we were there for an extra week while we were getting new wheels, and explored the town and got to know the marina quite well. What a beautiful marina as well. And then when we left from there, we were in Kentucky Lake, which is also another amazing place to go boating or yachting. The freshwater pearls, believe it or not, they dive all over that lake for freshwater pearls. But yeah, we ended up ultimately going to the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show.
And of course, you had the same electronics like we do today that make it so easy to navigate and know where you are and what's going on.
Well, we had differential GPS and still had Loran C. So yeah, learned a little bit about navigating. And you definitely had to pay more attention. And those days when you're going down the river, it was marker to marker, literally with binoculars, confirming that you've seen the marker.
Paper charts.
Paper charts.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and then you got to Fort Lauderdale, and did they trade for another boat?
So we went. They were, and anybody that would have an opportunity to do a trip like that would be completely bought in on boating. And I mean, what a neat boat at the time too. That 48 sedan bridge is pretty iconic even today. But yeah, I mean, to make that trip down there, they were really excited. Happened to be the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show going on at the same time as we arrived. And they wanted to go to the show, and quickly they had more than 2-foot itis. So we started looking at Hatterases, and ultimately they did end up purchasing a 65-foot Hatteras, or 74-foot Hatteras, sport deck, a 1999 model. And they owned that and used that in Florida for a good while, and then brought it up the river. Yeah, it was a pretty neat experience, and that definitely got me going.
Well, and I remember too, you did go to like a school or something down there for learning how to be a mate or how to entertain or,
Yeah.
proper etiquette on board and some of that kind of thing as well.
So I took a bit of a hiatus from Marine Max and signed on with them to be a mate again on their new Hatteras, and it was brand new. And did that. We had a really neat and enjoyable time. Learned a lot about the engineering side of yachts, which I'm decent at, but not great, but enough to get by. And again, navigation. And they ended up using that boat for 6 or 7 more years. Brought it up the river back to Minnesota, and I think Tom and Sheila are quite old these days.
Be nice.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, real quickly, you got back up to Minnesota, actually about the time that your sister was graduating. I kind of remember that trip when you came back and going really back to work for Marine Max, for Cochrane's at the time. And then eventually to Lake Minnetonka and partnered up with Mike Anderson,
The
who
notorious
you
Mike.
guys built quite the business on Lake Minnetonka that Mike is still enjoying today. And how many years on Minnetonka with you and Mike?
It's somewhere around 10. We started out in the gazebo with screens on the side and no windows and 26-foot Sea Ray Sundancer in the water. And we were dumb enough and young enough to take on that chance. And ultimately, and I can make a long story out of this, but a nice man named Richie Anderson from North Shore Marina who owned the property and was allowing us dumb young guys to sit in there and try and sell boats, felt bad for us and invited them into his main building. And we quickly became friends, and we created quite a location and amazing amount of success just out of that little store. And it's now evolved into a bigger store over on the other side of the lake, and it's done amazing.
We'll come back. In fact, we'll get Mike Anderson on the phone one of
Yeah.
these days and talk more about that because that's a great story in itself. And 14 years, or how many years ago now to Fort Myers?
Well, I'm not great with it like you are with exact dates, but it was 2014 we
Okay.
arrived here. Yep.
So 11 years.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And the reason you came to Fort Myers was opportunity.
My wife and I, Kim, had just had our second child, and she was on maternity leave. She was a human resources person, and I'd always wanted to be in Florida, but she's a rooted Minnesotan. And I just said, hey, honey, there's an opportunity in Florida. I don't know if it's going to work out, but if we're ever going to do something, it's now. And we did take the leap, and we came down to Florida. And as the old story goes, no money, no this or that. and it was pretty true, actually. And landed here in Fort Myers. And we were on, I call it a highway location. It is a highway, but 41 and a very small building. And we were outgrowing that. And that I'd heard about the possibility of Marine Max securing a marina. So that was the case. And here we are today at Deep Lagoon. And we've set some amazing records for the company. We've built some really interesting and large boats out of this location. So, yeah, it's been a nice run.
So we'll come back to Fort Myers on another time that we sit down and visit. But before we do, the biggest boat you've delivered today, as of today, out of the location here in Fort Myers?
That'd be a 90-foot Ocean Alexander, which they call a R, 90R.
So as a family starting out selling boats in the 14, 15-foot range made out of wood, aluminum, and some of those kind of things to a 90-foot yacht. And again, little tease, you got one bigger than that being built in Italy right now. What size is it?
Well, when they get to this size, they go by meters, so it's 54 meters.
Okay, and for us, like from Texas, about how many feet?
It'd be roughly 177.
Almost 200 foot.
Yeah.
And I think that fella started out in a smaller boat.
Yep.
Franklin Pillsbury with our podcast here, and we want to continue to talk about Let's Go Boating. So I appreciate son Kyle being with us today, and we'll look forward to bringing you another one of these real quick.
Thank you for having me.
All right.